will get started. So we're really happy to have Shannon Pyth here. Shannon's a PhD student at the Faculty of Kinesiology, Sport and Recreation here at the U of A. She's a researcher in the Child and Adolescent Sport and Activity Lab, and so the research she's been doing with Dr. Nick Holt, focuses primarily on positive youth development through sport and parenting youth in sport. So we want to welcome Shannon and thank her for coming up to do this presentation. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Can everybody hear me okay? I got to wear the mic because I'm having a little trouble projecting, getting over a cold. But if for some reason you can't hear me, just let me know. So thank you for the introduction, and thank you guys for having me here today. It's such a pleasure. So like Jim said, my name is Shannon, and I'm a PhD student here in the Faculty of Kinesiology, Sport and Recreation. So I'm primarily a PhD student, but I wear many hats. Again, like Jim said, I'm a researcher, and I study youth sport in the Child and Adolescent Sport and Activity Lab. So in that lab, we primarily focus on the psychosocial aspects of children and adolescents participating in youth and physical activity, and we're also, the adults that are around them, the parents, the coaches. Okay, it's fun to be here for me today. I consider myself to be a coach as well. I actually started in volleyball. Lee might remember, as a young undergrad, I started coaching a volleyball team while I was at GPRC. Today I don't coach volleyball anymore. I'm more of a mental skills coach, and I work with a variety of different teams here in Edmonton: basketball, soccer, baseball, and that's a lot of fun for me. I really like to coach the youth. And so I've been asked here today to talk to you about positive youth development through sport. And throughout this talk, I'm going to refer to it as positive youth development through sport. I'm going to call it PYD. I might just say positive developmental outcomes, but it's kind of this umbrella term that encapsulates all of that. Okay. So I'm going to explain to you what PYD is and how you can implement it into your coaching. And then I'm also going to provide you with some resources where you can access some research-informed youth coaching resources that you can use throughout your seasons that I think can be quite valuable. And then hopefully at the end, we can have some thoughtful questions and discussions surrounding the topic as well. So the first question I'm going to ask you today is, what kind of athlete do you want to coach? Okay. Do you want to coach an athlete that has good leadership skills? One that is respectful to you, the officials, even the opponents. Okay. An athlete that is a team player, works well with others. Do you want someone that comes into practice every day on time and gives 100% effort? Yeah. So if this is what you're looking for, and I think it's safe to say that most of you, if not all of you, do, then there's actually research that tells us that you as a coach are able to create that environment within your teams that foster and develop those skills for an athlete. Okay. So, and this happens using a concept called PYD. So what is positive youth development? Well, it's a concept that stems from positive psychology. I'm not going to go too deep into that today, but historically, adolescence, it's thought of as a time of storm and stress. Okay? So think back to when you were an adolescent. Okay? It's a turbulent period where you're going through all kinds of emotional, cognitive, social, and physical changes. Okay? The troubled teen years, you might say. Okay. When we start acting out, we might start misbehaving, defying our parents. And so essentially, teenagers were and are often still seen as problems that need to be managed. Okay. Adults wanted to keep kids out of trouble, right? Stay out of the streets, stay away from violence, stay away from drugs and alcohol. And so we wanted adolescents to avoid undesirable behaviors. That is called the deficit reduction approach. Okay. PYD emerged as an opposition to that approach. So adolescents who are fully prepared to enter adult society shouldn't just lack problems. We don't want kids to just avoid problems or reduce their bad behaviors, but we want them to thrive. We want to teach them how to use their strengths so that they're prepared to enter adult society, okay, with a range of different emotional, behavioral, cognitive, social skills. So PYD is a strength-based approach to youth development that aims to prepare youth to live a healthy, satisfying, and productive life. And so when PYD programs, when there's that PYD focus, they usually highlight the positive relationships between youth and adults, adults being you, the coaches, activities that build life skills, so we'll talk a little bit more about that later, and opportunities for youth to use life skills as participants and as leaders. PYD is not something that's exclusive to sport. It actually started with 4-H clubs way back in the day. But over the past decade or so, youth sport researchers have come to use PYD as a way to understand ways in which youth can gain positive outcomes through sport. So what does PYD through sport entail? Well, here's kind of a long-winded definition of that. But essentially, PYD through sport is a way for youth who participate in organized sport, so organized sport means that it's adult-led, okay, to gain transferable personal and social life skills along with their physical competencies. Okay. So they're learning life skills along with their sports skills. And these skills they learn in sport will allow them to thrive and contribute to their communities both now and in the future. So if we go back to this question of what kind of athlete do you want to coach? If you want to develop this kind of athlete, it's about creating the right environment, so the right experiences. Kids don't just automatically join sport and all of these things automatically start happening to them. We have to create that right environment. We have to foster it. Okay. Developing these skills, not only will it help them succeed in sport, help your team's performance, help you win some games, but it will help them thrive outside of sport and in life. So we're not just developing good athletes, we're also developing good people. So sport can be this educational context. When it is delivered and experienced by the athlete in appropriate ways, youth can achieve positive developmental outcomes. And so today, I want to talk about what you can do as a coach to create this educational context and help kids learn life skills. So first of all, we want to create a PYD climate. The PYD climate is the social environment that enables youth to gain experiences that lead to PYD outcomes. So athletes' relationships with coaches, parents, and peers form this kind of athletic triangle, okay, that creates and produces the youth sport environment. So the idea is that the presence of empathetic relationships with coaches, positive interactions with peers, and the supportive involvement of parents will enable youth to acquire PYD outcomes. So, of course, today we're going to focus on the coaching aspect of PYD and the PYD climate, and coaches have such a profound influence on the development of life skills for an athlete. And I'll tell you right now, coaches can create an environment conducive to PYD simply through their regular everyday interactions with their athletes. So incorporating PYD into your coaching isn't necessarily something that needs to take time away from learning and playing the sport. I think that's something that a lot of coaches hesitate about is they want to have this talent focus or this talent development focus. They want to have success or they want to win games. And that you can still have that. You can still have this talent development focus, but you can also incorporate and embed things into your coaching that will allow for life skill development and these PYD outcomes. Okay? So they kind of go hand in hand. And also, just to note, talent development is also strength-based. So again, they work together. So we're building the PYD climate, and it starts with building positive relationships with your athletes. So in the research that we've done, we found that youth get a lot out of having relationships with their coaches. Okay, athletes want to get to know the human side of their coaches and engage and have conversations with their coaches on an adult level rather than just seeing them as authority figures. Okay, so over the course of a season, you are spending so much time with these athletes. Okay? You see them several times a week for practices and games. You're traveling with them, spending time with them on buses, in hotels, gyms. it's important that in all of this, that they know that you care about them, okay, and that you have their best interest at heart. One way to strengthen the coach-athlete relationship is to take the time to get to know your athletes. So what strengths do they have? Their personal attributes, their physical abilities. What part of practice do they enjoy and why do they enjoy it? Okay. What are their ambitions? What are their values? What's their family background? Okay. When a youth athlete comes to you and you start to coach them, they're not a blank slate. They have a history. They've had experiences in sport and in life that have shaped them, and they know some things. So if you get to know them, you can use that information they give you to, one, make their sport experience more positive, and two, help you make developmental strategies for your team and tailor what you teach your athletes to how and what they need to know. So just ask them about their day, ask them what's going on, get to know them a little bit. So the second point, what do your athletes know about you? Have you communicated your coaching philosophy, your values, your goals for the season? So these things are important to communicate so that one, you can be on the same page for how you want the season to go. Two, your athletes understand what your expectations are for them. But then three, it also helps give the athletes some insight into who you are. Okay, let them get to know you a little bit. So some of the research has shown that in order to gain athletes' respect and make the coach-athlete relationship work, coaches had to demonstrate a certain level of credibility. Okay. This meant demonstrating to their athletes that they had the knowledge and skills necessary to coach them effectively. Did you play volleyball? Where did you play? How many years have you been a coach? Where did you learn to coach? All of this stuff is valuable information to an athlete to make an assessment about how credible they think you are. And that's where respect starts. Yeah. So some strategies I have up here for building positive relationships. I think team bonding activities are great. And I'm sure most of you already organize them for your team, for your athletes. But I'm wondering, do you participate in them? Or do you just let the athletes go and do their own thing? Because if you don't already participate, I would encourage you to do so. Okay? A really common, really great team bonding activity is organizing team dinners, which some of you probably already do. But as a coach, you can ensure that team dinners are actually a productive team bonding experience and not just a bunch of kids sitting around eating. Okay? You can plan discussions over dinner on specific themes. So for example, have athletes discuss where they're from or what their goals are for the season. Okay? And you provide each athlete an opportunity to share. You can actively participate in these discussions as well. So talk about yourself a little bit, give some information about yourself, and it also is an opportunity to inform the athletes that you're open, right? That they can come talk to you if they have any questions or comments on and off the court. Okay. I also suggest, and this one's a little bit tougher when you have really big teams, but I think with volleyball we're usually looking at like 12 to 15. Right? I think it's possible, it's more feasible. But if you have time to have one-on-one meetings with your athletes, this allows for that two-way communication that's so important. It gives them an opportunity to share ideas with you, discuss how things are going, what their goals are, what they're struggling with, if there's anything, in an environment where they are comfortable and without fear of being reprimanded. Okay? And it gives you an opportunity to have these positive and constructive discussions with your athlete while getting to know them a little bit better. So one of the main things about PYD is this development of life skills. And so if we want to create that environment, we have to start teaching life skills. I've mentioned life skills quite a bit, but what are they? So the definition of life skills is that they're physical, behavioral, cognitive skills that are required to deal with the demands of everyday life. They're the things that make us productive adults, right? That make us good at our jobs and good in school and good athletes. So things like teamwork, responsibility, communication. I'm a mental skills coach, but really when you're working with youth athletes, especially in the younger range, rather than the old-fashioned approach of trying to teach them visualization and what is cognitive reframing, let's teach them life skills instead. Okay? These are things that they can apply to life and sport. It will certainly help their athletic development, probably help their performance, right? But they're also transferable to other areas of life, and that will make them good people and thrive and contribute to society. So life skills can be taught explicitly. So this is where you take the time out of your practices and you sit down with your athletes and you talk to them about life skills. What did we learn today? What is a life skill? What are examples of life skills? Why are they important? And you kind of have those discussions about it, and you debrief on the different activities you do surrounding how you can learn these certain skills in sport. And like that's a great approach, and actually the research would say that having that explicit approach is going to increase children's ability to learn life skills. But that's not always appropriate. Coaches don't always have the time for that. So you can also teach life skills in a less overt way. Okay? This is through your behaviors, your expectations, and the activities you engage in with a team that are already embedded in your practices. Okay? So the research shows that life skills can be taught by setting high but reasonable expectations for your athletes and holding them accountable for their actions. So for example, if you want to teach your athletes time management as a life skill, have high expectations for them when it comes to being on time for practice. That's something that's quite simple, and it's probably a rule you probably already have, but it's having that expectation, kind of a strict, high expectation, it's reasonable, and then holding them accountable, having consequences if they don't meet those expectations, say by showing up late. Another way is to role model the behaviors you want them to engage in. So again, going back to time management, if you want to teach them time management, you should probably role model that behavior. You should probably be on time every practice. You should manage your practice as well, plan them out, manage the time surrounding your practices, and that your athletes will see that, right? And that'll encourage them to do the same. And then some other strategies, setting goals as a team, encouraging hard work in sport and in school. So again, that's just that transfer of using the life skills in sport and out of sport, and just kind of emphasizing or fostering that idea. But in addition to teaching them life skills, you also need to provide your athletes opportunities to practice the life skills. Okay, so life skills must be experienced in order to be effectively learned. One way to do this is to have a specific life skill in mind when you're planning your practices. So I'm assuming that at the basis level of your coach education, you are told to always plan your practices. Is that correct? Would you say? Yeah. Okay, great. So usually when you're planning your practices, you have a goal in mind. What do we want to work on today? And you'll have some kind of technical or tactical plan for the practice, some strategy that you want to accomplish at the end of the day. Well, along with those goals that for the practice, whether it's technical or tactical, include a life skill in there. So you might say, today we're going to work on this technical side of things, or we're going to work on this specific play, but we're also going to work on our communication. How can I design this drill to encourage more communication between my athletes? And so I just have a couple examples here. I like to give you guys some more like practical information for this, that how you can incorporate life skill teaching into your practices. So if you want to teach your athletes to be good leaders and communicate well on and off the court, allow them to lead activities and drills in practice. Giving them the chance to lead and direct their peers through the drill will foster their leadership abilities, but having to also explain the drill, having to articulate how to do it, and the goal and the purpose of the drill will actually help them with their communication skills as well. If you want to teach your athletes to create appropriate goals, that is specific, measurable, actionable, what's the other one? Realistic and timely, yes. So if you want them to create those types of goals, you should also do that for your team, okay? Create team goals. So for example, as a team, our goal is to make 97% of our serves in the next game, right? Oh no, that was just the air that cut out, I think. Sorry. I thought my mic was cutting out. All right, so yeah, your team goal is I want us as a team to make 97% of our serves in the next game. Myself or my assistant coach, we're gonna keep track of your makes and your misses. And then we're gonna go to practice and we're going to see, did we achieve our goal, did we not achieve our goal, and then how do we adjust it? So you're creating a goal for the whole team and you're kind of putting your athletes through that process of creating those specific goals, how to measure them and how to go about them, right? And how to adjust them. And also that might help to inspire and encourage some individual goals. So say you have a goal for serving as a team, that will inspire the individual athlete to make one for themselves as well. Another example is teaching athletes maybe problem solving, so present them with the in-game scenarios in practice and ask them to find the solution. Okay, so go to your athlete, you're in practice. Well, we keep getting beat in this area of the court. How do you think we can prevent this? The opposing team plays this type of defense. What do you think is the best way to play against them? So it's asking your athletes these questions and allowing them to think for themselves about a solution. Not only will they develop a greater tactical understanding of the sport, but it will foster some critical thinking and problem-solving skills that will benefit them on and off the court. But doing all of that, building positive relationships, teaching them life skills, all that, those won't really work unless your athletes are able to connect what you're doing and what you're trying to teach them. So a fellow student of mine here at the university, she just completed her master's degree. She studied life skill development and transfer among elite junior national level athletes. What she found was that those athletes, a lot of them didn't get taught explicit life skills. It was mostly implicit at that higher level, but athlete reflection was an extremely important aspect of learning the life skills. So they still learned life skills even though they weren't explicitly taught them, but that analysis and that connection to the certain things that they were learning in sport and how they connected to life was extremely important. And so as coaches, we can help teach athletes to reflect by one, having your athletes analyze their behaviors. So not just with teaching life skills, but with anything you teach them. Help them understand cognitively why they're engaging in a certain behavior. So encouraging athletes to ask questions like, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? How can I improve? Right? If an athlete makes a mistake, in order to improve upon that mistake, they need to understand what they did, what happened as a consequence, why it wasn't the right course of action, and then figure out how to fix it. Right? That's a level of analysis that we need to help teach them or help them get there. Also, as a coach, using the teachable moments that are presented to you. So help your athletes connect how the skills they learn in sport can be used in other areas of life. So if you're doing an activity that teaches them teamwork on the court, explain to them how those lessons can be used when they graduate and go to college and have to navigate working in a group project. Okay. Emphasizing how important those skills really are and kind of helping them succeed not only in sport, but in life in general. I remember back many years ago when I was coaching volleyball with the Wolves Club program, I was an undergrad. I had never done research. I didn't know anything about PYD. But I remember coaching, I think they were younger, maybe U15. They were starting to want to learn more advanced tactics of the game. I remember planning drills for the sole purpose of teaching them how to talk to each other on the court. Okay? Something as simple as calling the ball, communicating what plays they wanted to run, what sets they wanted. We wanted them to communicate so bad because it's such a valuable skill in volleyball. Okay? In hindsight, now that looking back, those drills were all teachable moments about the importance of communication in sport, but also in life. So we could have been running these drills and preaching to them, you need this on the court, you need this on the court, you need to talk to each other. One short sentence about how communicating on the court will help them as adults would have turned into a teachable PYD moment that would have taken 5 to 10 seconds, and it wouldn't have taken anything on our day, but we would have planted that seed. And it would have kind of been one of those implicit moments where we can make that connection for the athlete, and maybe they'll think about it, the next day, and it'll encourage them to learn more about communication. Okay, so again, it can just be these small, everyday interactions that we have with our athletes that can create these PYD outcomes. And then lastly, this isn't a concept that is exclusive to PYD, but I just want to point out a coaching style that is conducive to positive developmental outcomes for youth athletes. It's embedded in pretty much any research that exists within youth sports psychology. So again, I'm not necessarily trying to take time out of your practices, to take time out of your coaching, but trying to integrate certain styles and ways of thinking into your coaching. So mastery-oriented coaches, they focus on learning and developing skills, place an emphasis on effort, value athletes' self-improvement, and view mistakes as part of the learning process. So mastery-oriented coaching means that you don't see wins or losses as the only source or the main source of achievement. Your praise and encouragement is found mostly when it comes to self-improvement, athletes giving their best effort, and mastering their skills. So when coaches are mastery-oriented, their athletes are more likely to be intrinsically motivated, have a higher sense of competence, greater self-esteem, and more enjoyment and satisfaction in the sport. They're less likely to feel anxiety and burnout in their sport experience. So those are some positive things. And so that's why I like to say that at a youth sport level, we should be engaging in mastery-oriented coaching principles. So taken all together, building positive relationships, teaching, emphasizing the importance of life skills, providing opportunities to practice the life skills, teaching athletes to reflect, and then the mastery-oriented coaching. All of that, if you consciously integrate these things into your coaching. So again, not explicitly taking time out of your day to teach life skills, but having that intention to create these positive developmental outcomes, you get all of these great skills that athletes can learn. Okay, so our lab, we call it CASA, the Child and Adolescent Sport and Activity Lab, we did this huge meta-study where they took all of the PYD in sport research and put all the findings together so that we could figure out what are the benefits of all of this. And what they found was that sport programs that focus on PYD resulted in a plethora of positive personal and social outcomes for athletes. Okay? So leadership skills, decision-making, self-confidence, stress management, and many, many more wonderful skills that make an athlete enjoyable to coach. Okay? This is the type of athlete you want to coach. And you can actually help develop that on your team. So I like to give takeaways, right? I like to have something that you can take outside of this talk today. I wish I could just give those out. That would be great. They're not paying me enough for that. So say you like the idea of PYD or it resonates with you and you want to know more about how you can provide positive developmental outcomes to youth in sports. So I want to talk to you about an initiative that I work on that was started here at the U of A. And I honestly just don't think enough people know about this, or I want more people to know about this. It was started by my supervisor, Dr. Nick Holt. So PYD SportNet is an initiative in partnership with PYD research from across Canada. And that is a big deal because in Canada, we are the leaders in PYD. Okay, there are people from other countries that come here and they ask our researchers here in Canada to help them develop their sport programs. Okay, so we have got great researchers for PYD here in Canada. And our goal for PYD SportNet is to promote positive youth development through sport by sharing knowledge between researchers and sport practitioners, like yourselves, like coaches. Okay, so we have a lot of research in coaching youth sport. Okay, there's a lot of it that exists, but a lot of coaches don't know it exists because they exist in academic journals and they're 30 pages long and no one wants to read that. I am an academic and I don't even want to read that, right? So we tailor the information so that you don't have to read the 30-page research paper, okay? Instead, you can read infographics, short research reports, or magazine articles, and it's way more accessible and a way better read. PYD SportNet is a free resource, so this is not like me trying to give you promotional material or try to sell you anything. I actually just want to give you guys something to take away from this talk. You don't have to sign up, you don't have to do anything other than go to your Twitter, Facebook. We have a website as well, and grab the resources that are available there. I actually brought some handouts for you today to show you some of the stuff that we do. I'm not going to pass them around to everybody individually, but they're really great. They're tailored specifically. This is an infographic tailored specifically for coaches, and it's actually a really great summary of the talk that I've done today. They're over there, so grab some on your way out. I find the Twitter to be most informative because we're not only posting content that we create, but we're sharing other resources that come up, reputable resources that come up on the internet. And there's also just this great interaction between all of the researchers, and we're all sharing each other's work. So it's a good resource. No, so I think we have partnership with pretty much every provincial, we have federal funding for this project. So a lot of it comes through national sport organizations. So yeah, it's Twitter, so there's lots of interaction between the different bodies. Yeah, there's a website too, if you're not tech savvy, yeah. But here are some examples of resources that we have that are targeted to coaches. So these are like some of the infographics here. So say you can print these out, you can use them. They could, even for like sport organizations, they could be useful to give to your coaches. We also have resources for parents, athletes, and sport organizations. So say you want to provide the parents, so youth sport, what is one of our main stressors as coaches? Parents, yeah. And I study parenting, so I know that is true. But say you want to provide the parents on your team with some tips on how to behave during a game. We've got infographics for that. Print them out, hand them out. I have, or you can send it by email if you want to save the paper. But available through PYD SportNet is actually a magazine called The Sport Parent. So I created this online magazine. I'm currently the editor. The information is targeted for sport parents, so it may be something as a coach that you encourage your parents to read, but it may also be informative for you to read as a coach. Okay, so as a coach, you are a parent's main source of information. They're going to come to you for a lot of questions, and this is a really good way for you to stay informed on the types of things that parents want to know so that you can answer some of their questions. So these are some resources for informal coach education that could be useful to you, and the greatest part of it all is that it's informed by research. So we're not talking pseudoscience here, not Facebook science, not Twitter science, whatever you want to call it. We're talking about empirical evidence from sport researchers, which is extremely valuable information. And we, as researchers, we want people to use the work that we do. Right, so that's why it exists. So those are some tangible takeaways that you can use beyond this talk today. But just to conclude, here are some not so physical takeaways, but they are some takeaway key messages. So sport, like I said, can be an educational context in which youth can acquire positive developmental outcomes. So the athlete needs to experience sport in appropriate ways in order to attain these outcomes. Coaches are an integral part of the PYD climate. Okay, so they're part of that social environment in which children gain these positive developmental outcomes. They can help foster PYD outcomes, so things like self-confidence, teamwork, and communication by building positive relationships, teaching them life skills, providing them with opportunities to practice and reflect on life skills. Okay. So I hope that today I was able to teach you something new about PYD and that you will consider incorporating some of these principles into your coaching when it comes to youth athletes. I often hear people say, in my coaching philosophy, I've always made it a priority to develop good people, not just good athletes, right? A lot of you may already have that embedded in your philosophy. You might already kind of do things in your practices that reinforce that, okay? But learning about PYD, you know, some people, they find this concept and it's backed by research and it's backed by science that aligns with their coaching philosophy and can help them achieve their goals. So I hope that it resonated with some of you today, even if it's not an entirely new and abstract way of thinking. So we have some time left. I wanted to leave enough time to have questions and perhaps discussion surrounding this topic. I hope we have time. If you have any questions, thoughts, discussion points, I'd be really happy to take them and to talk about them with you. So again, thank you for having me here today. Oh, and if you want to contact me, that's my information.
And we do want to take a few minutes for any questions that people do have. I know I have at least one. I'll leave it up to you guys.
How often is that parent sport magazine updated?
So the question was, how often is the Parent Sport magazine updated? So I release new issues every season. Okay. Yeah, so we're, today it's January, so it's winter. So our winter issues already come out, so the next one will be in spring, probably.
Like backlogs available?
Yeah, so this is the website right there. Okay. There's a couple, I started it as a school project, and people started picking it up, and all of it is research articles, like condensed, interviews with researchers, interviews with people that work in the sport community. So that's the one thing about it, is that the reason why it can be helpful for coaches is that it's not articles about parenting. It's articles about things that parents want to know about and that will help them. So if you know those things too, you can help inform parents about that and answer some of their questions. Any other questions?
I did have a question.
Yeah.
What are good ways or methods to approach difficult conversations with athletes? Like, what would you sort of recommend?
Yeah. So the question was how to approach difficult conversations with athletes. So the one thing that I would say, because this is true for pretty much any difficult conversations between anybody in sport, is that the importance of getting to know the person that you're talking to, right? So when you're approaching a difficult conversation with an athlete, think about who you're talking to. Are they the type of person that will react well to being called out in front of everybody? Or are they someone that might react better to a one-on-one conversation? In terms of the conversation itself, is that kind of what you're going with?
Exactly.
Yeah. So in terms of the conversation itself, being honest, you hear about the sandwich feedback a lot. So something good, something bad, and then something good. Like, so we actually, I don't know the exact study, but there's actually some research that the sandwich feedback isn't really that great because it kind of convolutes the constructive feedback that you're having. So they're only hearing the good things. They're not really hearing the bad things. So with PYD, it's a strength-based approach. So when you have an issue or you're confronting an athlete about something, plan to use their strengths to address their weakness. So if there is something that is wrong with them, I'm trying to think of examples at the top of my head right now, but they're an athlete that seems really unmotivated in practice. They act really lazy. They're not giving 100% of their effort. Okay, that's a weakness that they have. So approach them about that by addressing one of their strengths. So you know what, you're good at this, or you seem to really enjoy this. I'm just wondering how we can use, how we can help you find that same enthusiasm when it comes to this aspect of practice, right? So using the strengths to help the weaknesses, I guess, is one way. Yeah. Hi, Ron. Yes. So, so do you mean like on the sport, like, so say like a club level, or?
Let's say like a provincial sport association, they're looking for funding to drop in one of the schools.
Yes.
It seems like the funding side of that has been totally dropped off because maybe people have lost a real sort of
Yeah.
to maybe get some funding support back into school sport? Like, is there a movement that's happening because of the evidence?
I think so. I don't know the reach of our evidence yet. Like that, so like with this initiative in particular, I would hope so. I would hope that sport organizations use this not only for the benefits that our findings give, but that that we're funding programs that use this, right? Like that's how it should be. But I can't speak to whether or not it's actually working because I don't know. Yeah, but I would hope so, and I would presume so, that we put some stock into that. Yeah. Certainly, like organizations have come to us to help provide them with information, and we normally we do that for free. But yeah, I don't know how. I don't know if they're getting more funding because of it.
Any other questions for Shannon? No? Well, thank you very much, Shannon. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, great.
So a couple things. I'll ask Shannon and I'll email her to request this presentation so
Yeah.
that you have some of the resources and access to that, like all the other presentations from the sessions. The other thing is once you can head downstairs.